It's Tuesday morning, November 16th, 18th, whatever day it is. And it's about 5:36 in the morning, so I'm actually kind of getting a late start at this, but that's okay because who cares? You get to watch it at your own time. So today we are doing a reading for my first young adult book. It's entitled Dark Dreams, Book 1. Yeah, hopefully you don't get bad lighting with this, but there's my name in the title. And this is from the Dark World series, which is available at GabrielMaestasReads.com, Amazon, any place you need to get a good book. I'm really excited about this book. Nervous about the read because, it's one thing to read a book, in front of a camera or in front of an audience, but to read your own book on camera in front of an audience, you might be like, maybe I could have worded that different, or if you see a comma or something like that. So hopefully it goes well, but a little bit of background about the Dark World universe. It sort of goes with the notion that the world we know and then the world that we don't know about, which is like vampires, werewolves, kind of a secret world, clandestine groups, mysterious creatures, dangerous scenarios. The adult version is, I don't want to say super hardcore, it's not quite splatterpunk, but it's got some gore too, it's got some language, and Dark Dreams is just toned down just a tad. Same characters though, but just a tad. So without further ado, let me go ahead and read the synopsis, then I'll go ahead and dive in. So, high school has never been so scary. Things have been getting rough in the suburbs, and it was obvious. Disappearances were on the rise, and the danger was everywhere. Polly was smack in the middle of a serious situation, and high school was getting more dangerous by the day. I have to find out what's going on. A few knew the truth and committed to helping others survive the dark world. Vampires have long been the work of Hollywood fantasy, but the Vampyre are another story. They aren't dazzling, you won't fall in love with them. They have a history, and it's brutal. See what I mean by it's hard to read your own shit? So anyway, that's the synopsis of it all, so I'm going to go ahead and dive in, of course, to book 1, talk a little bit about it. So the way I wrote this is sort of a throwback and homage to Bram Stoker's Dracula, which has a lot of journal entries and then a little bit of third-person stuff, but primarily first-person. Part 1, When the Moon is Full and the Wolfbane Blooms. October 10th, 2007, 11:13 p.m., Las Cruces, New Mexico. Special assignment involving a secret group known as the Knights of the Order. Paul slowed from a run, watching as the girl he was pursuing looked back. He was nearly 6 feet tall, and having been a police officer many years earlier, gave him an athletic edge. The night of the academy, she was fast. He slowly shook his head, and she knew she was guilty. You're not supposed to be here, Paul thought. Knights of the Academy have many rules to follow. She got into her Toyota Camry and drove off. He quickly redirected his attention to the tall border wall that ended on the far side of the parking lot, next to the multi-level storage garage. Paul meticulously scanned everything. The moonlight shone brightly over the area where they'd encountered the creature. Paul took a deep breath, staring at the shadowy figure near the bottom of the wall. The beast rose to a full stance, its towering profile casting a shadow on the bricks. It bent its legs and leapt into the corner, revealing its entire terrifying form. My God, Paul said aloud. He stared at the massive werewolf as it looked back at him. The beast's eyes glowed intensely, casting a green hue over its face and snout, a sinister snarl forming deep in its throat. Of all the dark beings, Paul kept his hand near his weapon. Werewolves are the most cursed and the most tortured. Paul could feel the hair on the back of his neck rise as he watched the werewolf's muscular body lean back, its chest filling with air. The creature opened its gaping maw, filled with jagged fangs, and emitted a blood-curdling howl. Paul's gaze narrowed as the cry painfully rang in his ears. It finally stopped. Paul tightened his grip on his .45 caliber semi-auto, and the creature leapt off the wall. Wow, excuse me. Probably cut that out later in post. Chapter 1, Rio Rancho, New Mexico. Have you ever looked at the night sky or into a dark part of your neighborhood and thought, damn, I wish I knew what was going on? Well, for me, that never happened. Not until after the events of October of 2007. Oh wait, I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Polly Herm, and this is a kind of freaky story. You ever heard of a vampire? It's a dumb question, right? Who hasn't? Well, it's not like you might be thinking. See, a vampire is a Hollywood creature. Sure, they go back a ways. In the movies, vampires are known as the undead because they're not dead, but they're not alive either. But they look alive, and they have all sorts of crazy powers and blah blah. Okay, well, in the real world, it's not really like that. Not in the world I'm telling this tale in. Just bear with me. You see, the vampire, that's plural, as in all of them, and it can refer to one at a time, they're real creatures. The vampire aren't alive, they aren't dead, and they have powers. But they need one thing on a regular basis: fresh blood. Not deer blood, not bottled blood. Wherever that weird idea came from is beyond me. They need live blood from humans. Sounds outrageous? Well, think about a flea. When your dog has fleas, people are like, oh my god, I'm gonna get fleas. No. These fleas eat doggo blood. Which fleas feed on human blood? They're called, I cannot pronounce this, it's from Google. Zexophilia chipos, and they'll only eat human blood. Vampire are the same. They need human blood because they're monsters. And get this, well, this example. Whenever pets look around like they hear something that you can't see or hear, most of the time, that's because they hear much better than you. But what about that funny sixth sense? You know, the powers we all acknowledge that are really, really undefined? Yeah, vampires or vampire have powers like that, but on steroids. Seriously, they can do some horrible, awful things. Here's the deal. The vampire are real, and they have been and continue to do terrible things in our world. This is a story about something that happened in my small town to me and my little buddy Meeker. He and I weren't from around here. In fact, we act more like a cute little old couple from New York, but that's not the point. I'm rambling. This is a story that one time... Wow, gotta fix that. This is a story about that one time when all hell actually broke loose. There are things that go bump in the night. From The Order. October 13, 2007, 7:06 a.m., Rio Rancho High School. Detective Thomas Wallace took a drag from his cigarette and opened the door to his police unit. The door creaked as he swung his legs out and set his feet on the ground. He looked toward the high school, watching the security guards do their best to clear students from the northern half of the parking lot. Students are such mongrels, Wallace thought as he cursed his beer gut and heaved himself out of the car. He took one last drag, which ended with a cough. Shut the car door, tossed the cig, and began walking toward the main campus. The detective entered the lobby just before the concourse, which led him to a small juncture before the cafeteria and administration offices. From there, all 5 academy buildings were assembled from a large corridor. Wow, hang on, I gotta read that again. From there, all 5 academy buildings were accessible from a large outdoor concourse. Wallace thought it was pretty dumb to call them academies. He'd bet good money that most of the students didn't give a rat's ass about their academics. Except for the nerds, of course. The rest were there for the meat grinder that was public education. He shook his head, wishing he could afford to send his stepdaughter to private school. Wallace walked toward a crowd of loitering students who were ignoring the security guards. One of the larger male students bumped into the detective. "Watch out, Pops," the student sneered. Wallace glared back at him, slowly moving his cheap suit jacket away from his body so the kid could see the badge attached to his belt. His pistol was also visible. "Easy, kid," Wallace said. "Don't cause any problems for yourself." The young man raised his hands. "Don't shoot, officer!" His friends all laughed. "Jackass," Wallace mumbled under his breath. He continued walking toward the Science Academy. The detective noticed 2 uniformed patrol officers enter the academy from the other end of the concourse. Wallace picked up his step, catching up to them and following the officers inside. One saw him and they acknowledged each other. The officer held the door for him. "How's it going, detective?" "Terrible as usual," Wallace said. "Yep." "Hey, you were at that warehouse fire the other night, weren't you?" Wallace hesitated before nodding. "Yeah, that was a real joy. Multiple injuries, and I have no idea what happened." Wallace was lying. He knew exactly what happened, and he hadn't believed it long enough to tell anyone else. He wasn't even sure he believed it himself. "Isn't it suspicious that we're at another horrific scene this morning?" the officer asked. "Probably not related," Wallace answered as they entered the lab. There were three more officers standing near a pool of blood that had been isolated with crime scene tape. Maybe not. The officer kept walking toward another group of officers while Wallace stopped near the scene. It was strange. There were no footprints leading away from the blood pool, and no objects dropped or broken nearby. That was very unusual. The worst part of the mystery, they had no idea whose blood it was. Ooh. So, just a short reading from Dark Dreams, Book 1. The nice thing about the timeline, the stories, and how they coincide with the Dark World is if you read Dark Chronicles Volume 1 and 2, this book is directly after Dark Chronicles Volume 1. Now, I don't recommend Dark Chronicles for the young readers, because this is 14 through 18. I don't recommend Dark Chronicles for that age group, because, a little bit more adult themes, language, gore, stuff like that, and of course, some of the settings are, adult-esque and all that stuff. But the story is fun because you could talk about it if you were to have read Dark Chronicles, and then, someone else read Dark Dreams, so it makes it kind of fun. So, hold the book up once more, plus you'll see stuff popping up over here. Dark Dreams, Book 1. Check it out, and if you have made it this far in the reading, I thank you. I know it's rough. It's actually the first time I've read my stuff on screen. Not live, because it's pre-recorded and will pop up for you guys later, but first time I read my stuff. So, thank you for staying with me, and if you haven't stuck with me, try